All right, everybody. David Ellefson here, Joshua Toomey. Man, this was not a podcast we were prepared to make. Um, Obviously, the news of Ozzy Osbourne's passing just went out on the news wire just a couple hours ago. Um, I'd say we're all in shock. I was texting with a bunch of friends and musician buddies that we were just at the Back to the Beginning events a couple weeks ago, and couldn't even believe it. So, how did you find out, Josh?
I was actually on a call um, with an amp company because Primer's getting ready to go on tour, and I
Mm,
could hear it. My texts were just blowing up, but I didn't check it because I was talking business or whatever. And as soon as we hung up, I looked at my phone. I had like 10 missed texts. I had a text from you. My
yeah.
wife texted me. I was just like, "What's going on?" And the first thing I opened up was just said Ozzy died, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And
Mm,
and watching the Back to the Beginning concert, I looked at my wife and I was like, I have a feeling,
yeah.
it just kind of had a feeling that he was going to pass. And hopefully this was, the Back to the Beginning man. Now knowing what we know, that is such a nice wrap up to his life.
Hmm.
It's, he, he mentioned, being in the basically being in a chair for 6 years and not being able to see anybody and just really needing to get out. And you had said something earlier about me, maybe this was something that kind of prolonged his life, gave him something to look forward to. And then now that he's done it, he knew it was time to go. But yeah, it was so incredible that he got to go out, headlining a stadium with both of his bands and all of his
Yeah.
friends, and his, getting to see Kelly get engaged and all that stuff, there, and everybody, you know, there were so many, there were members of his band missing, but there were so many members of his band from over the years with, Rudy and Mike Borden and all those guys just kind of all in the room together. And I think he just put his nice little exclamation point on his life. I'm sad to see him go, but I'm so happy for him that he got to live that.
I completely agree. I mean, um, to me, it always felt like going into the gig, the show, this was a celebration of life before the end.
Right.
Usually someone dies, there's a funeral, there's a wake, there's a celebration of life. I felt like all of this was before that, like,
Mhm.
we've seen the video clips. What's the one Ozzy says? He goes, I know I'm dying. I don't need a fucking doctor to tell me that,
Right, right.
and which, look, this, we all know no one gets out of here alive, right?
Mhm.
And that's just a fact, right? So he was at a point where he knew, look, my brother died of cancer, my mother died of congenital congestive heart failure, and we knew the day was coming, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we can prepare. It's shocking when the minute it happens. And I was there with my mother and pronounced dead. The nurse looks at her watch and gives the time, and I was there for her last breath, her last heartbeat, so to see, what they wrote, that he was there with family and friends, you know, I guess on some level, look, they all knew, the day is coming, and so that's a nice thing to hear, that everybody was there for it. It wasn't some sudden shocking thing,
Right.
and we all had some time to prepare for it, right? Because we all knew the condition, we got to see the condition when we were at the gig, even watching it online. um it's still shocking, it's not
Right.
surprising, but it's shocking, when you
Right. I
hear it.
get
It's
that.
like, whoa, here it is, this, oh my god, really? Like, just we were just with them a couple weeks ago, and I was texting a bunch of friends. We were going to have Adam Wakeman on here in a couple weeks, like next week, and he just said, I texted him and he said, yeah, can we push back the podcast? I said, of course, so
Right.
this changes the skew of a lot of things in life. It's interesting when when anyone passes, a friend, a family member, your whole life changes. It derails plans. And I think for all of us, even just fans of Ozzy. It's like such a sad moment. I remember as a kid, like when Sid Vicious died, from the
Hmm.
Sex Pistols. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was so sad. I didn't know him, you know what I mean? But
Right.
his music, that band changed my life. When Bon Scott died, you're like, oh my God, it was so sudden. These were sudden moments, right? Young
Hmm.
men who passed unexpectedly, and it changes everything. I was just on the phone with Jose Mangan and Mark Striegel from Sirius XM. They're doing a big thing on Ozzy's Boneyard right now, and as what a perfect platform, to
Right.
have rock stars and fans and people calling in and weighing in. So um, one of the things I shared, a couple things on there that I'll share here is when we did the band photo with Ozzy. Well, let me back up.
Okay.
We did Ozfest '98. Then a few months later, Ozzy comes back to Black Sabbath on New Year's Evil, which was December 31st, 1998. We played the stadium there in Phoenix. And then he was back in Black Sabbath at that point. And, um, fast forward 2013, Megadeth does the South America tour with Black Sabbath. And, you know, Billy Morrison had invited me over to their camp to hang out with him and Ozzy, and you know we I normally wouldn't say this for someone because you don't break someone's anonymity, but Ozzy, it was known Ozzy was clean and had his battles and stuff, but he was clean, and so I got to hang out and be the sober brother with him,
Right.
which was great. And I say it now because it speaks well to his life and his legacy, and the Prince of Darkness and all the crazy snorting ants and all the crazy
Right.
shit he's known for. I didn't know that guy, you know, like Motley Crue did, I guess, because they were
Right.
on the
Right.
tour. Or those guys. I knew the sober family man, that guy, I got to know that guy, and that was really wonderful, so when I saw him at the event, for the band photo, I went up to him. I said, "Hey, Ozzy, it's David Ellefson, from Megadeth, from 2013. Remember?" He goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, man. How are you?" And he was coherent, obviously, and he knew and remembered, and it's nice to see you. And so it was very pleasant, a nice connection. Of course, everybody's coming at him, so I had just
Right.
a moment to kind of get that in. Um, because for me, going to the event, of course, was about playing the show, playing the music, being in the room with our musician buddies. But there's a part of me that was the moment I wanted. I wanted to just connect with my sober brother, my
Hmm.
friend, who I shared some intimate moments with, as we do, as brothers in that campus, um and that was great. I mean, to me it was kind of like, I'm good, oh, we're going to play some songs too, that'll be fun too, you know what I mean? So
Right.
for me
Right.
it was more about that connection with him, which I got to have, so I was really happy about that. And then when we were all done, we took our photos. There was a family photo. Ross Halpin was there, and they took a family photo, and I think really the tender moment I got to see was Grandpa Ozzy, Sid and Kelly's daughter.
Hmm.
Um, where they put her on Ozzy's lap, and he was so happy, like a genuine nice old grandpa, and he was
Right.
bouncing her on his knee, and he gave her a nice kiss on the forehead, and he was just so smitten with her, and she could tell she was smitten with him, as a grandfather and a granddaughter, and it was
Yeah.
so sweet. I was just like, that's Ozzy now, that's his life after all he's been through. This is really who he is, and of course he shared from the stage, that he'd been derailed for 6 years, and how that really took a lot out of him to not be
Yeah.
on the stage, but after the show, Sharon gave me and Jakey Lee some passes for the VIP meet and greet thing afterwards, and not your typical VIP. It was more of a backstage VIP area. Actually, it was
Right.
not. Actually, it was not a meet and greet. That wasn't the right way to say it. And so we're all hanging out, and eventually, as the night went on, everybody was back there, all the rocker dudes, But um, they bring Ozzy in, and we're all excited. So I go up, and I just sent you a video of me standing right there, and Ozzy sees me, and he waves. He goes, "Hey, come here." So I crouch down and say hello, congratulate him on the show, and tell him, "Man, that was freaking awesome." So it was kind of, it was nice to have that connection with him, you know, as a friend, not just as a you're one of the rock star guys.
Nothing would make me happier than to spend the rest of my life with you. So in front of your family and all of our friends, Kelly, will you marry me?
And then, unbeknownst, standing there, and Jack, shushes everybody, and next thing you know, Sid freaking proposing to
Right.
and Ozzy said, "Yeah, you're not fucking marrying my daughter," and
Right.
everybody
Yeah.
laughs. And Kelly has shared a similar video, on her socials, so it's really wonderful. And all of a sudden I'm standing there, I'm like, literally, I'm right there. I'm going, oh my God, it's like we're being in the Osbournes' living room right now while this intimate family moment is happening. And I was just at a Slipknot show a couple weeks before, and I saw, the little kid there. I went to see Corey and say hello, and they were baby was walking around the hallway. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
so I didn't put that together that Sid and Kelly were a thing, and I did not know that. So to see that happen, I was just like, oh my God, it was like just like a proposal, and Ozzy was so happy, man. He was
Hmm.
just beaming, as you'll see in the video there. He was just glowing. He was just he had that after show glow. You know how we are as
Oh,
musicians
yeah.
after you get
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
stage and the gig is done and you're just beaming. And you could tell he just wanted to hang out. Like he was thrilled. And in that moment you think, God, the guy's gonna be around for another 5, 10 years, you think he's ready to rock, man. Maybe he's gonna do some more shows. Who
That's
knows
what
what
I
he's
was
gonna do,
thinking.
right?
After watching that, I was like, I would go see Ozzy in the chair, and I could
Yeah.
see him and as much as people say that, Sharon kind of pushes him and makes him, the cash cow and all that nonsense. I think that Ozzy was the one that wanted to do this show the most. I think that
I would
he
agree.
wants to be, he needs to be on stage. He lives on stage. I've seen them a ton over the years, and he, absolutely loves the stage.
And that's what I think probably hurt him the most was those 6 years he wasn't able to be on
Hmm.
stage, and he said as much. It really that hurt him. That was really debilitating to his spirit of just all that he is and who he is, and you're right. I mean, I have family friends, and someone died with older. The husband, the grandpa, was dying of cancer, and the wife just, let's go on a cruise, let's go to Hawaii, let's keep going. Just kind of keep it going. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Always giving something to look forward to, and I feel like again, I feel like this was the wake. This was the celebration of life for him while
Mhm.
he was still here, rather than, oh, he passed, let's throw a concert. Now it's sad,
Yeah.
and sort of the memory of Ozzy. I thought Sharon really did a great job, and all the organizers, Andy Copping and everybody who, and the agents, Rod, who put all this together, to do this, for Ozzy, but also for him to say goodbye to us and for all of us to say goodbye to him while he's still
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh man, I sure wished I had a chance to see him one last time. That
Right.
old lament, right? So I think, the way you look at kind of the way it all teed up here was just it couldn't have been any better, man. I mean, it's sad he's gone. We're all gonna miss him. his music lives on, of course. His the memory of his whole persona will be forever. I mean, look, he is our Elvis. You know,
Yeah.
if I don't think I've ever known of another personality as big as his in my lifetime. You know, I mean, there's David Lee Roth, there's Eddie Van Halen. We've had some of these guys, but I think Ozzy, the rock star, the character. He was bigger than life. You know, he was bigger than all that, and he started it. I mean, that's I think was important from that gig. Is Black Sabbath they are the founders of heavy metal. Period.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it was not Led Zeppelin. It was not Deep Purple. It was Black Sabbath, and then immediately behind them is Judas Priest. Period. Like that is just, and they're both from Birmingham, and it's documented, and it's just unarguable. You know what I mean? And I think that was really a great thing to just put that flag in the ground for once and for all, forever, to be, just sort of encapsulated in time.
Yeah, it's funny. This was like the first time I texted my uncle earlier, like because
Mhm.
growing up, you know, he's wearing the Black Sabbath shirts, he's wearing the Ozzy shirts. I'm like, what's going on there? And he kind of tells you about Ozzy. I mean, being a kid in the 80s, he's still the devil, he's still Satan, and he's still
Yeah.
biting heads off bats and all that stuff. So you're also seeing it, through pop culture. Like, I opened my phone a minute ago and every single post on Facebook is RIP Ozzy, but it's like Adam Sandler posted about it. There's like sports websites posting about, like, it's
Yeah.
TMZ's post. It's not just the metal community, it's the world. And it's, Ozzy was in Little Nicky, and
Yeah.
he just touched so many lives. And
Yeah.
hopefully, this Back to the Beginning concert showed him that, because, I've always joked with my wife. I'm like, hey, if I'm on my deathbed, post that I died 15 minutes before I'm gonna die, so I can see a little bit of the, oh,
Yeah.
he was such a good dude. Oh, I loved his pod. Any of that stuff. I want to see a little bit of it before I go. And hopefully that was his being able to see it before he passed.
Yeah.
The concert and everything else, because like I said, it's nonstop on the phone. It's every band, it's every outlet, it's everything has
Yeah.
an Ozzy story. And my generation of fandom is, he not only had Ozfest and championed so many underground bands, System of
Hmm.
a Down and Linkin Park
Right.
and Slipknot and all those bands. Like, they were side stage early in the day bands, but they really got a break through Ozfest. And the
Yeah.
first time I saw Korn, first time I saw a ton of bands, opening for Ozzy. Ozzy always had fantastic opening bands, and he was
Yeah.
he was never gonna just. It never really felt like he was just gonna take out, has been bands that maybe his of the same ilk or something. He was always pushing the new bands coming up. I saw
Yeah.
Sepultura on the Roots tour open for Ozzy. I mean, that's as far, the core Ozzy fan is probably, the not gonna be all about some Biohazard and Sepultura, but he brought them out on tour and showed them to a new audience.
No, I mean, look, Metallica said it. Look, he broke us on
Yeah.
the Master of Puppets tour, which was Ultimate Sin, I think, right? Same with Nicky.
Mhm.
Nick said the same thing about Ozzy. He said, look, he broke Motley Crue. That's the tour that gave us our leg up and got us in the game, and that, he again, like you said, well, I remember when Elvis died, right? I was about 10. It was
Mhm.
1977. No, I guess it would have been, what, 13, I guess, right? And my mom was a huge Elvis fan. And I remember when he died, the world stopped.
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite, the news icons, everything stopped, and it was all about Elvis, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what just happened, just a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
hours ago. I mean, here I am in London, right? We're over here working on this Jeff Scott Soto stuff. We're at the Battery Studios, just all this awesome killer stuff, right? Working
Right.
our asses off, having a great day. We just took a break for a minute. We're chilling. And our guitar player, Walter, comes down the steps. He goes, "Hey, did you see this? Ozzy just died." We're like, That moment when you hear
Mhm.
those words, just like you had, just like everybody watching this podcast, everybody around the world, when you saw the post, you read it in your text, you heard the news, dude, your world stopped right there, right? You just stopped and you just went, whoa. There's a piece of all of us that has died. There's a piece of our lives that is now only in memory, that you can't get any more of it. There's no more new songs. I love that Billy Morrison song, The Gods of
Mhm.
Rock and Roll. I texted with Billy. I just said, brother, I'm so sorry. And, just saw the display at the Ozzy Museum there in Birmingham. There's a cool plaque for him, like a sales award plaque for he and Ozzy and Steve Stevens for that track. And it's I think that was the last recorded track that he ever did, I think. And then of course, this young blood thing changes.
Right.
My God, that is the Live Aid moment. That is the Freddie Mercury Live Aid moment from this. And I knew it when I was watching it. I was standing stage left on side stage watching it, and I just goes, dude, that shape that he's throwing out on that freaking ego ramp in front of the stage, I went, that kid, this is Freddie Mercury Live Aid all over again, man. This is it. And it's funny, at the studio today, Alessio in his studio has that picture of Freddie Mercury
Oh,
on from
nice.
Live Aid. And I was looking
Yeah.
at it, I'm just going, dude, I just saw that. It was called Youngblood. Back in the
Right.
beginning. I was like, there it is. That that's it, and so to have that moment happen. And we should also tell everybody, if in case you missed it, we had Rudy Sarzo and Mike Borden on the
Mhm.
podcast here. So go back into the archives here on YouTube and go find that. Dude, Rudy and Mike, but Rudy had some great stories because he was there. He only played with Oz for what, a year and a half, something like
Yeah, it
that.
was like a year and a half, but he was there for like all the pivotal moments with the
Yeah,
biting the head
Randy
off the bat
Rhodes. Yeah,
and
the pissing on at Rozzy, biting the head off the bat, peeing on the Alamo. All the
yeah.
like legendary stuff. Ozzy, Rudy was there for it, and so definitely check that episode out. You will definitely want to see that. I love Rudy's such a sweet, lovely guy, but boy, when he gets talking about that stuff, as I'm glad he did for us on the
Mhm.
show here. Dude, that's everything that I was reading about as a kid when I was
Right.
16,
Oh, yeah.
17 years old, going, oh my God, Ozzy had to get rabies shots. Oh my God. This is, again, Elvis level, like not even human,
Mhm.
above the level of humanity is where Ozzy, lived. And, it's sad that he's gone on one level. He was going to be suffering. He probably was suffering, and it was probably not an easy days right now for him. So on, one level, when someone passes, you're like, you know what, sail on, brother. Get out of this broken body. You gave us a lot. We can't ask for any more, man. Sail
Right.
on, brother. Head back home and see the Lord and hang out with Randy Rhodes and rock out with Randy Castillo and go back
Right.
home and see your brothers, you know what I mean? And so um, you know, just so thankful, for all the Ozzy moments that I got to have in my life, musical, personal, and otherwise, it's really, really great.
Yeah, I've always said, one of the Megadeth records I like to go back to the most is Hidden Treasures because I just,
Mhm.
so all the uh soundtrack songs and everything else, but obviously that cover of Paranoid's on there too, and the it's a
Right.
great cover, and then it's kind of fun at the end, obviously with Nick kind of continuing on and Dave or
Yeah.
whoever yelling at him to Nick, uh, but yeah, so you have a connection there too with obviously the cover of
Well,
Paranoid and stuff like that.
yeah, it's funny because we went in the studio to do 99 Ways to Die for the Beavis and
Mhm.
Butthead thing for Geffen, right? And we kind of wrote the song in the studio. We laid it down, and while we were in there, our friend Bob Chipardi from Concrete Marketing, he was putting together this Ozzy tribute or this Black Sabbath tribute called Nativity in Black. And I think
Mhm.
Pantera was on it, and
Oh,
us,
that's
and
a
then
great one.
Anthrax.
Biohazard and
Yeah,
stuff too, right? Yeah.
yep. And so we didn't have a song, and I told Dave, I said, dude, trust me, Paranoid. but because I brought it up, he didn't want to do it, right? So he tried. We literally spent the next hour and a half. He's trying every other riff, and hey, why not? Let's give it a try. And then out of nowhere, he stops and he goes, now, doodle 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 doodle, and we all just jumped in. No, and it was just so obvious, right? It was just, and the
Right.
only reason I suggested it is I had played it with my friend Greg Hanna, but we'd played it in our bands in Taz or something. We were kids at the
Right.
farm, and it was just, it's a simple tune. It's so classic, and it's ironic that Sabbath ended their show and ended their career with that song. So to me, it's always the one that resonated with me. There's so many great ones, but that to me was the one, and I'm glad that's the one we covered, because that was the very last Black Sabbath we are ever going to hear again in our lives. That album was so early in their career, and then it was the very last song we are ever going to hear Black Sabbath ever have played was Paranoid. So um yeah, I'm glad that was the one we archived. Now we did do Never Say Die during the euthanasia sessions. I think Capitol wanted us to do some covers, or do some
Mhm.
bonus tracks. So we did Never Say Die, which I'm really glad about, because that's such a cool tune. I thought we did a great job. Guns N' Roses covered it at Back to the Beginning, and did a killer job with it. I told him, I go, fucking great job. I told Axel Splash, dude, good job on that. That's kind of, I think, guys of our age,
Yeah.
that's a cool deep cut for us. That was Ozzy's last album that he did with Black Sabbath, back in the early days, and before he left the group. So to me, that song also has huge significance. So yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. So yeah, glad we did this, and
Yeah.
to everybody, our condolences, our thoughts and prayers to the Osbourne family, and to everybody, the organizers and friends and family and band members and everybody who's been there for Ozzy and the Osbourne family. So thank you for all you gave us, and to
Absolutely.
all the friends and fans watching this. We feel your pain, and our condolences to you.
Rest in peace, Ozzy.